Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. I hope all of you are having a great day. Welcome into another edition of the show. And I'm your host, Ben Crossman. Thank you so much for joining us. And now, for longtime listeners, today's guest should be no surprise, as is the first Wednesday of every single month. We have, of course, Mr. Mike Cermak. That's right, techguy.org. Check it out. They are, of course, one of the industry best if you have any kind of tech support problems. Instead of going through, I'll be honest, I had to deal with this a little bit over the weekend, but instead of going through the companies individually, and, that's always good because sometimes they can help you out like none other, but a nice forum, a nice meeting place of, just very, very tech-savvy minds in one place can be just what you need, rather than, the runaround from a company and all the different departments, yada, yada. And, hey, techguy.org, we recommend them for any tech support problem you may have. It's, definitely worth checking out. And, of course, Mike Cermak, longtime Computer America correspondent, and just all-around great guy to have on the show as we talk, lately current events, some light tech support stuff, but in general, it's always a lot of fun. So before we get started with Mike Cermak, I, of course, want to mention a few things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you will find everything from the show notes. You will find everything, including the live video stream, where you'll be able to see myself, as well as any articles we talk about, as well as Mike the man himself as well. And then last but not least, you will be able to check out the social media contest, where we give away a prize to one lucky listener every single Friday from our friends over at Logitech. Rules, how to enter, and all that good stuff can be found, again, computeramerica.com. So, with all of that said, why don't we just bring him in? And this is, once again, Mike Cermak, owner and operator of techguy.org. Mike, how are you?
I am doing well. How about yourself, Benjamin?
Not doing too shabby. Actually, very, very good. And, although I will admit, as I said earlier, spring, happy to see it come. Great, the change of seasons. But the allergies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm feeling it, man. I am feeling it.
Yeah. And it's of course just one of those things that, you take the good with the bad. But as Computer America, I like to think a lot of our audience are indoor people anyways. So
that's part of my problem, perhaps. I don't go outside. I just stay inside.
Right.
I crack the window and then suddenly can't breathe anymore and have to close it again.
Yeah, outside's overrated. I mean, humans wouldn't have spent thousands of years perfecting inside if outside were so great. So
Right.
So right. And as I was saying, welcome back onto the show, and we have a few things to talk about. Surprisingly, none of them Tesla and Elon Musk related.
Yeah, I'll have to work on that. That's kind of going to be a disappointment for everyone. They rely on me to bring them their Tesla news.
I know. And, and to be fair, they are doing a lot of things. But, no, we actually have a number of other things to talk about. And one of the first things that we have to talk about, we touched on it lightly yesterday, but I would love your input here because, part of me was happy that Microsoft is, coming out with their new Surface laptop. And then the other part of me was like, for that price and the specs you get, but we'll get into
Right.
that. So the Microsoft laptop, Surface laptop, why don't we get into that and, just a quick overview for everyone who may not know what we're talking about, Mike.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, a lot of people are familiar already with the Microsoft Surface Pro, which is a wonderful tablet that's becoming very popular for people to use. It's kind of Microsoft's competitor to, I don't know exactly where you would fit it in there. It's not really an iPad. It's similar to the iPad Pro in a lot of ways, but it can run any desktop application on it as well. So it's much more powerful than an iPad Pro.
Right. They
Um,
and just real quick, from a couple articles that I read yesterday, they were actively comparing it to the computing power of a MacBook Pro, and then like the battery life of a MacBook Air. So it's somewhere in the MacBook lineup that this is trying to take on.
That's right. Yeah, and so the Surface laptop that they've just announced is kind of a take off that. It's very similar to a MacBook Air. It's very thin, relatively powerful, long battery life. It is not the name confuses a lot of people. I've talked to a couple people today who, because it's a Surface, they expect it to either be a convertible where you can remove the screen and use it as a tablet, or it's just a keyboard attached to a Surface Pro. But it's not. It truly is a Surface laptop. So it's a traditional laptop with a hinge, and it doesn't do anything fancy. It doesn't do any of the flips or disconnects, or it's a laptop.
Right.
And it does have a touchscreen, which is a bump up from your MacBook Air. And I really like laptops with a touchscreen. I thought it was a gimmick at first. I'll admit I was wrong. I've had a laptop with a touchscreen for about a year now, and I'm surprised at how often when I'm browsing I'll use the screen or to hit OK buttons or whatever. So I kind of like that aspect of
But
it.
but to be fair, and of course they have the full fledged keyboard, so I'm not saying this is the only option, but sometimes it is easier to reach out and touch. But in your own experience, would you say that's exclusively, forget the keyboard, who needs the stupid thing, or or is it just convenient and you use it occasionally?
I would say I use it occasionally. Depends entirely on what I'm doing. If I'm browsing the web, if I'm taking content in, I'm more likely to use the touchscreen. If I'm creating content, I'm more likely to be using a keyboard and mouse.
Right.
So it depends very much on your current activity. But I find myself, even when I'm at someone else's computer, I'll reach up and start to touch the screen. Oh, that's right. That's not a touch screen, and I look foolish. But so anyhow, so I like that aspect of it. In that sense, I think it's a step above the MacBook Pro. But it's the thing that is kind of a shocker for everyone about this is that it has Windows 10 S. And Windows 10s is something that we're just beginning to learn about. There's a lot we don't know about it yet, but the big thing is that it can't just run any program, any desktop program that's out there, like the Surface Pro can. On the Surface Pro tablet, you can run whatever Photoshop, whatever desktop program you run on it. It'll run on your desktop. You can run on the Surface Pro, but in Windows 10s you can't. You can only run programs that are from the Microsoft version of the App Store.
And and to be upfront about it, I mean, Microsoft has tried this before, and if do you see any parallel between Windows RT and RT2,
Oh,
which were amazingly beloathed by many people out there? They did not like Windows RT. Do you see any kind of similarities between Windows 10s and Windows RT?
sure, of course. Yeah, it's very, very similar. It's a restricted version of Windows that it's not the full-fledged. You don't have all the capabilities. It's and I can see the market for that. There's pros and cons to that, right? Like you have the walled garden that you can only use the things that Microsoft has approved to be used on it. Just like on your iPad, you can only run the apps that Apple has allowed into the App Store. There's some exceptions that you can put on developer options and so on, but by and large, for the average person, that's the case. And the pros and cons to that is the simplicity that you don't have to worry about downloading and installing programs. You don't have to worry about viruses and malware so much, which Windows PCs are famous for. And if you can only install programs from the approved App Store, that really cuts down a lot on that. And the other benefit, of course, is that Microsoft then gets to get a kickback on every sale of every item that's purchased.
That's right. Yeah, they get to keep that that revenue flowing, and this is not uncommon if you use something like a Chromebook. Chromebook has about the same thing,
Right.
but something that is a little unique and something that Microsoft was found guilty of, had to pay a bunch of fines over in Europe. They tried this before. I don't know why they keep trying to do it again. But with the sale of like Windows phones and I think it was certain tablets or computers with Windows 10, they made it so that the default browser could not be changed from Windows Edge. And according to this other story, this other article from The Verge, By the way, links in the show notes. But according to the other article in The Verge, they say that yes, you can download other browsers. So maybe that's their loophole.
If they're in the App Store.
If they're in the App Store, correct. But the Windows Edge browser will remain the default no matter what you do. So if you click on any link in anything, it will default to the Edge, no matter what.
Well, and I think obviously they do that because everyone loves Edge. Nobody wants to use any other. Wait, why are you laughing?
That's funny. That's funny. I like it.
And I mean, yeah, that's exactly it. It's just silliness that they would do that. There's no logical reason to prevent people from being able to choose whatever browser they want to use. I mean, even the iPad, gives you some abilities to have other browsers do significant things. I mean, this is an interesting restriction, and I don't know. I kind of suspect that they're going to back it down on that a little bit. I think they're going to allow other browsers to become default.
Right.
Once they start getting some feedback from people, they're not going to like that.
Right. Yeah. The feedback is incredibly paramount because really, at least personally, maybe others have heard about it beforehand, but the Windows 10s operating system, the first time I heard about it was from this educational seminar, showcase, whatever it was, where they unveiled this laptop as well. I mean, this is the first time. The feedback has not come in yet, but they kind of already did backtrack, kinda, sorta. They said that this could be upgraded to like full-fledged Windows 10, right?
Right. $50 to go to Windows 10 Pro.
So and once you go the full-fledged route, I mean, you get the full-blown Windows 10 operating system. You can download anything you want, and it's like any other PC that you've used with Windows 10. So,
which begs the question of when you're paying $1,000 for a device, why would you not just pay $50 more to have an operating system that can do things?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. It's such a strange thing. And see, with Windows RT, a lot of the time you were getting that kind of dumbed down operating system, not so much to reduce cost, but because of the performance, that the devices that Windows RT was running on were much, much slower and not capable of the same performance as a full-fledged computer. But in this case, the specs are, I mean, it's not amazing, but I mean, the baseline one has 128 gig SSD and 4 gigs of RAM and a decent processor, and it can run Windows. I mean, that's not really, and they were talking about the optimizations of Windows 10s and that the boot time of Windows 10s is 15 seconds faster than of Windows 10 on similar hardware. And I'm like, well,
I mean, and yeah, part of that, I think you're completely right, where the Windows 10s operating system has to do with, they also claim that this laptop is boasting a 14.5 hour or 13.5 or 14.5 hour battery life, which is amazing. That's a couple hours better than, say, the MacBook, the MacBook Air. 14 hours, that's great. But part of it, part of my brain says they can only get that with Windows 10s and not Windows 10. Because
I'm sure that you're right about that. Absolutely. And so there is some benefit there to be running the S version rather than the full version, just to be able to get some better battery life. But part of that is just because you're so restricted that you can't run other things on it or another browser. And they've long since been going on about how much more energy efficient Microsoft Edge is over other browsers, and I'm sure that's part of the reason that they're restricting it here as well, because you're not going to get that performance if you're using a different browser that isn't quite as efficient, in their operating system. I don't know.
And of course, as I mentioned, this was unveiled during Microsoft's educational event. They showed off things like Minecraft that can be used for coding. They showed off some augmented reality, features that could be used for education. But obviously, this was they said it very blatantly. This is meant to be for college students leaving high school, going into college, and needing a computer to do their schoolwork on. Do you think this is going to appeal to anyone else? Because I feel like when college students, especially high school students, I feel like most of them are going to have laptops that are capable already without having to, get like. Do you think the Surface laptop is going to have that mass appeal with all of its quirks, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll have mass appeal at the $1,000 price point. I mean, if you're a poor college student, you might look at, something that's half the price with higher specs, but it sure is pretty.
Yeah.
And I think that there's also, I mean, there's the side of it that, it is an acceptable alternative to an Apple device. It looks good. It's a nicely designed device. And I think that there is an appeal for people who are not going into a technological field, who want a device that just works. They don't mind that walled garden. They prefer that walled garden. They don't have to think about it. They don't care what browser they're using. They don't care what apps they can run, as long as what they have works. And in that regard, I think there is a market for it. And of course, it's way too expensive right now for the specs that it has. But we'll see that drop down in a matter of months.
I
It'll be
yeah.
interesting to see.
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. And again, these are base specs. $1,000 gets you 4 gigs RAM, 128, a Core i5, and I'm
Yeah.
sure for another $600 you can get 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs, and an i7. So,
Yeah,
it's
well,
yeah.
the top of the line one is 16 gigs with an i7 and 256 gigs SSD, and it was over $2,000 for that. I mean, it was an
Wow.
expensive machine. Yeah, I mean, a $2,000 laptop, you don't hear of that very often these days.
I
So,
mean, to kind of put that into perspective, of course, you can hardly compare a desktop, tower to this sleek, the sleek looking laptop. But I recently upgraded to an i7 7700K. I got an M.2 500 gig. Yes, I'm bragging. 500 gig M.2 SSD, and 32 gigs of RAM, and all the parts all together cost me something about $800, and that's way better than the high end specs of this thing. So
oh,
I,
sure,
I feel like they're trying to take Apple on their own game, because this has definitely elements of the Apple computer. Like, honestly,
absolutely.
I feel like if you looked out at a college lecture and you saw all the MacBooks with the glowing Apple logos, and then you
That's
see
right.
all of these right next to them with the black Windows logo, you'd be like, oh, they're all using the same computers. I mean, they're similar.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly it. And that's obviously what they're competing. I mean, even if you were to watch the conference about it, they were comparing the battery life to Macs. They
Yeah.
had several different types of Macs that they were comparing it to. I mean, it's clear that that's what they're going after. And obviously there is a market there. People are willing to pay a premium price for a well-designed system that, like I said, that just works. I mean, Apple has shown that over and over again that some people are willing to do that. Now, and this is supposedly designed for students and education market, and there's a 10% discount for students who purchase this off of that
Right.
that high price, so that helps a little bit as well. And I don't know, I can't see schools going in and buying a ton of these, at least no schools that I'm familiar with. I don't know. And if you're in any kind of technology field, I think that you would want a computer that you can go in and run whatever programs you want on it and be able to change the browser and do things like that. So it may not be the computer for those sort of people, but
Yeah.
there's different markets, and this may go up against Apple at their own game, and maybe allow Microsoft to steal a little bit of that market.
I hate to say it, but this is indeed one of those things. We'll have to wait and see. It's new operating system, new product, and it looks great.
It does.
I
The
wish it
price point worries me. That's the only thing. Because with
right.
Microsoft, if Windows 10s becomes available to the other OEMs, which it will, then Dell and HP and everyone else Asus will come out with their own version of this that is going to be half the price for similar specs. And I mean, granted, this is designed to be, Microsoft is always, their hardware. They try to make it the what's the word I'm looking for? The head of the
Right,
the
right. The
the
my
flagship.
yeah,
That's
right,
the word I'm looking for.
right,
The
right.
the flagship design of that. They're trying to demonstrate the capability of this hardware and software working together with the hopes of other OEMs trying to follow and make their own versions off of it. So
I mean,
I think the price point needs to come down a great deal for it to really be competitive.
right. Personal wish list. I wish it was like $400 cheaper. I wish it came
Right.
natively with Windows 10 and not Windows 10s. But at the same time,
I
the
can see the
yeah,
the the push for Windows 10s. It wouldn't be for me obviously, or for a geek type person, but for your average user, yeah, the browser thing is kind of silly. But they may change their mind
right,
on that yet.
right.
But the walled garden of the App Store, in terms of malware and antivirus and
That's true.
the things that scare people on computers, I can see that as a benefit for some people who don't care about computers.
That's true. And of course, the touchscreen, because that is a feature that a lot of schools
And
really
why
do
doesn't
advocate.
Apple have that yet? How is that still a differentiation?
Well, actually, we're going to talk about Apple here in a second, and we could go into, just off the top of my head, half a dozen reasons why Apple sucks. I could say that they were neglecting their hardware. Their iMacs and their MacBook Pros line are dwindling. Their hardware sucks. They don't have touchscreen. That weird Charms bar on the
Yeah, right.
on the laptop. Like, Apple can draw a lot of criticism, but we also have another story here that we can kind of blend this into if we can do it right. Apple has and we reported on this Monday, but Apple has a little bit of money laying around. Like
Just a little.
admittedly, it's laying around all over the globe, but yeah, $250 billion in cash that is currently again all over the world, so in many different countries, not sitting in one pile on one table. That'd be a
Right.
strong table, but no, Apple. So yeah, what do you think about Apple? I mean, because again, I can draw criticism. I'm sure you have your fair share of criticism, but can you really, how bad can they be doing with that much insulation?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, obviously they're doing very well, and can do basically whatever they want. I was having a conversation about a month or so ago with a friend of mine who was convinced that Apple is going to make the iCar, and I am convinced that they are not. It was one of these Tesla conversations I get into every day, and I hope that more manufacturers get into electric vehicles, and there is a lot of sign that, I mean, there's no doubt that that Apple is going into the car market at some degree. I suspect it's going to be more of a hardware development that then they're going to sell their Apple device that's going to go into your Ford or GM or
I
whatever.
believe, I believe, and we just spoke to another correspondent Friday. I don't recall the actual name of the company, but Apple purchased exactly as you called it, a hardware development company that makes radar and things like that for self-driving cars. And yeah, they bought them, they're developing them, and they're working on it as we speak. But
Right.
no,
And
but they're not going to
the
buy
question
Fiat.
is, right, well, and that's just it. The question is Apple going to make their own car, or is Apple going to sell technology to car makers? And I think it's going to be the latter. And my friend is convinced it's going to be the former. And that's a big difference. But I have to admit, and I did during the conversation, Apple can do whatever the heck they want. I mean, if they wanted to go in there and become a car manufacturer, like be the next Tesla or whatever, they've got the money to do it. They can just decide on a whim, okay, we're going to start it up and let's do it. They have that kind of bank behind them to get into whatever field they really want to.
Yeah, and this article that again we have in the show notes, but at the same time, in the article that I was covering the day that this was announced, they were talking about some of the big acquisitions, and in fact, a lot of investors are kind of pushing them to say, hey, look, things are. You can't really say things are kind of going stale over there, but they have a lot of money. It's time for Apple to make a big purchase, and they were naming some companies that they could purchase if they wanted to. Netflix is only worth $60 billion. They could pay.
Only 60 billion.
I know, only. Well, when you talk about 250 billion, in
Yeah,
the
no,
bank.
you're right. Uh-huh.
So like they could purchase, they could purchase the entirety of Netflix, and Apple and iTunes could own Netflix. I mean, like it's those kinds of big purchases they could do. I mean, Disney. Someone mentioned Disney. Disney is only worth something like $180 billion. They could buy Disney in cash. I mean, Apple can do whatever they want. It's just
Yeah.
which way are they going to take it?
Right. And that's exactly where this conversation was going, because to become a car manufacturer is not a small thing, and to build that infrastructure, especially for electric cars, to have the charging infrastructure and all of that. But and then you have maintenance, and you have to have service centers, and you have all of these things in addition to just the minor issue of development. But if they wanted to do it, they
Check this
would.
out.
Yeah.
Check this out. We talk about Tesla all the time. Mike, you have a Tesla, and of course we love talking about Tesla. Tesla currently, and this is Tesla Motors, Tesla battery systems, Tesla Solar City. I mean, everything Tesla currently market valued at $55 billion. They could buy 5 Teslas, and start and just take over what Tesla's doing, but slap an Apple logo on it and call it a day.
Heck yeah. Or yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and again, this is the article that we linked to is a little bit cheeky. They show,
It is, isn't it?
a couple of things that
I
they
was
could buy.
rolling my eyes a little bit.
Yeah, they have things like 12 border walls, because we talk about the price of that, how, that kind of thing. We could talk about any company in the Fortune 100 companies. They could buy any single one of them. I mean, a yacht for every member of its staff, or somewhere in the neighborhood of anyone counting 395 million iPhone 7s.
Yeah.
Loaded. It's crazy.
And that's at full retail price, which,
Right.
obviously Apple wouldn't be paying if they were to buy iPhones. But
Right, and the article of this coming from Telegraph.co.uk, they have this nifty little widget. In the time that we've spent talking about Apple, Apple has made $430,000. So, about 4 minutes, and they've made $430,000. Not bad, not bad.
yeah, they're doing all right. So
Yeah,
I don't know if we're in any position to really critique them too much, but
right.
that touch bar is kind of stupid.
But at the same time, right. But at the same time, you grew up with Apple. I grew up with Apple. Of course, I use a lot more Windows, but in school settings, the computer lab was always decked out in a full array of Apple Macintoshes. We like Apple, and we just want to see Apple do cool things. They were a trendsetter for a long time, and lately it feels like, hey, they sell a lot of phones, but computer wise, they really haven't done that much. And you might be with me. I just want to see Apple do cool things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's always good to have competition. I don't want either any company to have complete control over the ecosystem. So it's good that we have these competing environments. But you're right, we haven't seen the level of innovation that we did in the past. When we had things like the iPhone and the iPad and devices that most of us didn't realize we wanted until they were shown to us. It's the old thing of, that people thought they wanted a faster horse when they wanted a car. And
Right.
until you know that this type of device exists. And I remember when the iPad first came out, I remember telling my wife, I need one. I have no idea why, but I need one. I don't know what I'm going to do with it exactly, but I need one. And it's that sort of thing that we haven't seen that level of innovation in a while. And that's not an easy thing to achieve. I mean, that's a lot of risk. I mean, look at the watch, the iWatch. I mean, the Apple Watch. I mean,
I
and
mean, to be fair about the Apple Watch, they did, I think, carve out a pretty good niche where everyone else was floundering. I mean, Apple Watch is the most successful wearable on the market currently. It's just wearables
it
in general aren't
right.
successful.
Yeah, it's the best of a really terrible category.
Right.
And hopefully it'll continue to evolve and become something useful. I don't want to say not that it's not useful, but something. Yeah, I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Is something that's more accepted and more widely used and make some money for them.
Right. And yeah, and so I think we're going to leave the Apple conversation there. We have about another minute so we can get into this. This is, by the way, I came up with the best headline. You can, of course, find it over on our website, but I called this Orange is the New Blackmail. This, where, thank you. I know.
Did
This
you
is,
come up with that? That's
I,
really good.
and I'm hoping no one else did it because, I might have read it and just said, oh, wait, yeah, that's mine. But no. Orange is the New Black. It's a hit Netflix television series. For anyone who has not seen it, it's one of Netflix's most popular dramas, and it's very compelling. And yeah, I mean, they had a new season 5, I want to say,
I think that's right.
yeah, season 5. Their new episodes are supposed to be coming out here in a couple of weeks. We have, whenever a new series comes out, Netflix does a lot of PR, promotion, advertising. And yeah, they're just about to ramp up into that. And then tragedy strikes with a hacker. So, and again, we have about 20, 30 seconds. Just real quick, Mike, what happened?
Well, the hacker got their hands on the new season and tried to blackmail Netflix for it. Netflix said no thanks, and the hacker released a bunch of the episodes.
All right, that's a good rundown in 20 seconds. But we'll be back on the other side of the break to, of course, talk more about this. So, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to Computer America. If you're just joining us, Mike Cermak, techguy.org. Check that out, and we'll be right back with him and more, and a lot more articles. And hey, stay tuned. So, we'll be right back with more Computer America. Music means you have to take a break. And yeah, we'll be back with Orange Is The New Black and all about how they got hacked and if they're going to be able to get their episodes back anytime soon. So, like I said, stay tuned. More Computer America coming at you right after this.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, if you are just joining us here after the break, welcome into the show. We have Mike Cermak, techguy.org. Check it out for all of your computer problems and computer needs. And we are continuing on with this Orange Is The New Black. And this isn't the first time we've had a major studio. This is maybe the first time we've had Netflix. But, of course, there was the big one, Sony, a couple of years ago with... was that the North Korean one with the comedy that got released?
Yes,
yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah, it was a silly movie, came out on Netflix. But,
Yep. What was that called?
Yeah, that was the Interview, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Hey, pretty funny, but yeah, got hacked. So, yeah, and again, Mike Cermak, we kind of gave a quick rundown, but Orange is the New Black. Why don't we talk about, what the hacker did, what the hacker has, and what the hacker kind of wants to gain from all this? Because, and this is the thing. It's a Netflix series. It's not like they're going to leak it out and you're going to spoil the ending. Well, maybe you might. But, in 3 weeks, all of the episodes are going to be out, completely. It's so what's happening here?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. So it turns out that one of the vendors that Netflix uses for post-production, we believe, is who was hacked. And so the hackers got in there and were able to copy off all of the upcoming episodes. Well, not all of them, because some of them hadn't been completed yet, but almost all of the upcoming season. And apparently sent a threatening, message to Netflix saying, if you don't pay us this sum of money, then we're going to release them. And Netflix apparently didn't respond or didn't respond appropriately to them, and they went and released it, and also released a message saying that they have other videos from other providers that they may, from ABC and HBO, and they named a couple of others that they may release as well, that they're not playing games anymore.
Well, they definitely are playing games.
Well, they sort of are, aren't they? It sort of is a game. But, yeah, and I don't know, though. I don't know. Does this hurt Netflix? Like, does Netflix care that their show was partially released a couple weeks ahead, or does this help Netflix?
Well, yeah, and deep
it's
down,
kind of really great publicity, especially considering that they weren't able to release the entire season.
Right. Yeah, and of course they of course left out episodes 2 through, or they had episodes 2 through 10. So episode 1 and the season finale, the season finale are conveniently left out. And just like the Interview with Sony Pictures, and they thought it was going to be a pretty big flop. They didn't want to do it, and a lot of people said it was this weird guerrilla marketing that they were doing. You're right. This is such great advertising for Orange Is the New Black, as if it needed it, but this is certainly something different. And there's a few trends that I of course want to mention that happen with piracy, because at the end of the day, if you are going to watch episodes 2 through 10 that are currently out, you have to go through a pirating site to download it. It's not like there's, Orange is the New Black 2 through 10.com. You have to go pirate these videos. So, and you have to torrent them and all that kind of thing. And we see this weird thing where wherever Netflix comes and Netflix has content available on their site, the piracy rate of that content drops dramatically, because
Right.
people, if people can access it legitimately through Netflix or other streaming services, they don't feel compelled to go out and get it. So, there's going to be that, that few week lag time, but at the same time, Netflix, not like they earn advertising revenue off Orange is the New Black, not like they really lose that much. You're right. Orange, if anything, this is just great promotion, and I really don't think they're going to lose that much. People are just going to, personally, I'm not really into it, but if I were, I would be so lazy that I would just wait the 2 weeks and watch it on Netflix instead of having to go out and find it.
You're exactly right. And to that point, I remember back in the day when before people were stealing movies, we were stealing MP3s. Before you could go to before iTunes and before Amazon MP3, where you could easily go out there and buy these songs, people were were sharing in P2P and Napster their music. And exactly the same thing was said then, that once these studios get it together and once it's easier to go and pay 99 cents for a song than it is to go out and try to get a copy of it illegally through one of these programs, it's just going to fade away. And I think that's the case. I mean, how often do people go out and use some P2P program or Pirate Bay or any of the others to get music anymore? It's easy and cheap and sometimes free to use some of these services to listen to music, and people don't bother stealing that anymore. And I think movies are beginning to get that way as well, especially when it comes to anything on Netflix. I mean, why would you bother? It's easier, it's better. You don't have to worry about it. What language is it going to be in, or is it going to be in subtitles, or are you going to get the whole thing, or is it really going to be some other movie and someone's being a jerk renaming it, or
Right.
or is it going to have a virus in it? Because that's where a lot of the computers that we work on from residents that have viruses on it, we find these programs on there. They're downloading stuff, trying to get their movies for free, and accidentally end up downloading 4 viruses with it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just, why would you do it? And how much does it really harm Netflix here? So is anyone canceling their Netflix subscription because now they already have the Orange is the New Black? Like, it's not as though Netflix was charging per episode or even per season. No one was going out there and paying to see Orange is the New Black. It's people who already had a Netflix subscription who could watch it. So I just don't see how it has harmed them in any real way, and seems weird to me to go and threaten them with a blackmail on this. And I,
That's yeah, and again, that's kind of my thing, is that Netflix is such a different business model that this might have
yes,
worked. This might have worked for, let's say, NBC. I'm hoping NBC does Survivor, but whoever does Survivor, like if you had access,
CBS.
CBS, there we go. If you had access to CBS's the last episode of Survivor, like yeah, that's worth a lot of money because they make advertising. It's a big deal. They care about ratings.
They
Netflix,
don't release them all at once.
right? Netflix
That's
doesn't.
part of it as well. I mean,
Yeah.
because with CBS and with most TV shows, they can build that up and they have that viewership week after week after week of whichever show you're talking about, and like you said, a lot of advertising revenue, a lot of people watching it, and it's very different when on this day every episode of the season comes out and you're not paying to see those and there's no ads in those. I mean, you are paying to see them, but you know what I mean. You're not paying
Right.
to see that particular show. You're like you said, it's a very different business model, and it just doesn't get hurt by
If
this sort of thing like CBS would, for instance.
Right. If nothing else, I can see why Netflix didn't respond, because they probably sat down, in a boardroom and said, "So what?" And they just didn't respond to the hacker.
Right.
So, there are probably better. And this again happened with The Interview, that movie, from a couple years ago from Sony Pictures, who they say they were hacked. In that movie, with a couple others, got confiscated, or got stolen. But yeah, they sent it directly to video and directly to Netflix, and it
Yep.
had great. It was probably one of the most watched movies that summer, and it's made its money elsewhere. It didn't really matter that much. So I don't know.
And the other thing I'm sure that Netflix was considering is that this will be a sign to other hackers of how they're going to respond to it. That
Yeah.
if the word got out that Netflix paid these guys $1 million or whatever to hold it off, then they'd be more apt to have to deal with that again in the future. But where the hacking community learns that Netflix doesn't care, they're not going to pay me anything for it. I'm just going to be taking the risk of going to jail for it. They're going to go hit some other target instead.
Right, and in this article that we of course link to, they embed tweets from a number of people who all, kind of say don't support the hackers, don't download the videos. I'm like, first of all, hackers really don't profit off of torrents. Once it's
Right.
out there,
Right.
they don't really get anything. So if you want to go download it, go ahead. But at the same time, odds are if you're a fan of the show, you're gonna binge watch it on Netflix once it's out anyways.
That's
So
right. And actually, by going and downloading it from some other source, you might be helping Netflix because then they don't have to pay for that bandwidth.
that's right. That's right.
Like,
And
are you really hurting? Because it's not as though the alternative is you have to go and pay Netflix to watch it. You're already paying Netflix whether or not you use their resources. I
that's
don't.
right.
It's a win-win for Netflix. They get the publicity. They get perhaps a slightly lower bandwidth bill from the handful of people who will go out and go to the trouble of downloading this. And what's the downside?
I believe we here at Computer America, are the Super Sleuth team of Ben and Mike, have just figured out this was good marketing and this was a good decision. Orange is the New Black, leaked on purpose. There you have it.
Right there, you have it. Yep, Netflix made this whole thing up.
Absolutely.
And then in this upcoming season, in one of the episodes that weren't shared, we're going to find the hackers there in prison with the other characters. What are you in for? I hacked a Netflix stream.
I hacked a Netflix show and no one cared. That's right.
Right?
Yeah. So
Yep, they should do that. That would be awesome.
that'd be pretty funny. But but right, and again, we base this on absolutely nothing. So yeah, take that as you will. So okay, Orange is the New Black. Of course, available in a few weeks. You can catch half of it now, or you can wait a little bit and catch all of it later. So in the meantime, we have a couple of other stories here that I had sent to you, and one of them is kind of tying into a bigger topic, and since we have a little while here on the show, I think we have time to get into this. And this is the idea of course, IndieGoGo, Friday Lab, Smart Lock, and as much as cool technology is really coming out of IndieGoGo, Kickstarter, a number of other sites who are claiming to do the same thing. At the same time, it's hard to put your finger on a success story. And, again, we're going to talk about this one with a smart lock because, hey, that's technology. But we can also branch this out a little bit later into, IndieGoGo, Kickstarter, what have you. Is it really going to last? Like, is this really, worth, continuing if everything that they put out ends up failing? So, all right. So, yeah go ahead.
Well, yeah, and certainly I wouldn't say that it's fair to say that everything has been a failure. There's probably many, successes that we could think of given enough time. None are coming to mind right now, but I'll look for some. But I've helped a couple of projects on both sites and have had some successes. I also was one of the people who helped pay into the plastic card.
Yeah.
Not so much a success.
Yeah.
And I suspect you already talked about that on the show a little bit. And yeah, I think that these type of sites will continue to go on for some time. But people are going to be a lot more cautious and are going to learn what it means to invest in a startup.
Yeah, no, it's. I feel like they definitely need to, do more warning. We of course learn more, as years go by. This one, Friday Labs, they have a smart lock that they were pushing on IndieGoGo. You go on, you could pre-order one for $180, $190, cheaper than the full retail price when it was to hit market. And yeah, they, like most out there who have hardware, they promise to ship within 6 months is usually, kind of the average for a Kickstarter or IndieGoGo. And the reason we're talking about this article, this coming from Engadget, is that they deliver their smart lock which is, for anyone out there who does not know, a lock that is controlled through your smartphone, through the internet, through some kind of internet connected device. Yeah, they delivered it, but 2 years later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it kind of crazy.
Can you count that as a success? I'm not sure. I mean, at least they delivered compared to an awful lot of places that don't.
At least they delivered, just like plastic, as you said. We did mention that. We did break Craig's heart with that.
Ugh, broke my heart too.
Yeah,
But
it
see,
was
the
such a
thing
great
is
job.
with plastic, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, I'm sure you've covered it, but part of the problem with plastic also is that it's not as needed as much now as it was whenever they first started. And I don't even remember when that was a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
Today we pay with our phones and and we have chip technology and all these other things that didn't exist when plastic first started, and it's just not as relevant now as it was. That wasn't why they went under, but I mean,
Right.
it's just the way technology moves.
Right. Yeah. You definitely develop a device for your current situation and not the one if a couple years ahead, because hey, you don't know what's possible. Just like this one. This is again a smart lock for your front door. They say that it's iOS and Android compatible as well as Apple HomeKit, but that's the thing about Apple HomeKit. It's not the leader. It's not the standard. Alexa and Google Home and what have you,
Right,
they're the leaders. It doesn't work with those. So, and
right,
2 years later, you can't exactly say, "Oh wait, I don't want that anymore." You kind of already paid for it.
right. Yep, that's right. And the other problem with it is as time goes on, you get more and more competitors out there through traditional means. I mean, if I just did a quick search for Wi-Fi locks, and there's a ton of them out there.
Oh yeah.
Remote lock, Lockatron, Kwikset has a Kivo smart lock, August smart locks. Yeah, it's just there's whenever 2 years ago this idea was first brought up on Kickstarter, it was awesome and unique and wasn't out yet, and people are eager to be the first person on the block with the new type of technology. I'm just as guilty of that as anyone else. I love new gadgets. And so you want to, yeah, take my money and give me the cool new thing that you've just, come up with. But it takes a long time for new products to be developed. And sometimes, even when they deliver them, they suck. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember one of the smart doorbells that came out that had one of the first ones that had a camera in it and microphone and speaker, so you could you talk to the person who comes to your door no matter whether or not you're home. And I got in on one of those. There's been several of them since, and it was terrible. I mean, it was just like a beta version hardware. It was unreliable, and they delivered it, sure, but it wasn't usable. And so you
One.
just you never know what you're getting when you pre-order like that.
Right. Yeah. And I don't feel like people uh, who have money and are looking to buy into these products and services, they don't always have the wherewithal, or not wherewithal. That means money. They don't always have the know-how to really know if what they're buying is actually feasible. Because there was another one. It was this little device. It would go on your wrist and it would project down your forearm, and it would be, and they promised a touchscreen on your forearm so that you could control devices. You pull up the device, it would show up, and you could press stuff on your arm. We've seen technology kind of like that, but when you really looked at what they had, it was a Pico projector glued onto a wrist strap, and it really wasn't functional at all.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of people don't know what that is. So they said they had a product, and then when someone called them out on it, they're like, "Oh, that was just the beta. We really don't have a working prototype," which you kind of need for an IndieGoGo or a Kickstarter to begin with. So, like, there's a lot of con work out there as well.
Yeah, there definitely is, and there's a lot of con work, and there's a lot of people who are overly optimistic, and there's a lot of people I think who go on to Indiegogo and think they have a great product or think they have the engineering abilities and manufacturing abilities to make it work, but don't. They don't have the experience in doing it, and they don't realize how difficult it is and how expensive it is to actually manufacture a product.
Yeah.
And
That that
it's
that's half the thing, is that you're buying, like, you think you're just buying a product, but really you're investing in the people behind it. You're investing in
right.
people are going, you're kind of hoping they're going to take your money and everyone's money, millions of dollars in some cases, and be responsible and be
Right.
smart
And
enough to
even
start a
if they are
company.
the most honest person in the world, that doesn't mean that they're going to successfully be able to launch this product.
Right, right. Because many companies out there, especially some of the rare successful ones, or I shouldn't say rare, some of the successful ones, if they do end up delivering and they do end up becoming a good product and a good company, they, they take the initial investment from Kickstarter and then they go to investors and then they have to start a company. They have to go to board of directors. They have to blah, blah, blah. They have to rapidly expand to really meet demand for what they're starting. So,
They have to build some prototypes and do some real testing, and that's where a lot of places fail. And then the manufacturing process itself to pick the right partners to work with.
and then you end up with things like Pebble, where by all
Yes,
accounts that was to a lot of people the most successful outcome for Kickstarter. That was the dream Kickstarter's dream to be, and
right.
yeah, they sold to Fitbit for not a lot of money. I mean, it's hard to say that this is across the board successful. Again, like you said, I'm sure there are success stories, but I kind of picked the story out. Again, link in the show notes if you want to check out the Smart Lock story. But again, this kind of branched us into a little bit of a larger conversation of IndieGoGo, Kickstarter, GoFundMe is more of a personal thing, but a lot of these services, they are very shoddy. Don't take your rent money and put it towards one of these products.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you have to go in there being a knowledgeable investor and knowing that you may get nothing out of it, or you might get a terrible, useless product out of it. I mean, that's just the way it goes. And they warn you of that. I mean, all of these sites, you go into Kickstarter or any of those, when you start to put money toward one of the projects, they warn you of that. But who reads the small print anyway? Who and you're so excited and optimistic, and it's such a neat thing. And look at that cool projector right there in the video. What
Yeah,
could go wrong?
yeah, I know. And one of the success stories, which I was so sad to read, was that gentleman who offered to make potato salad for anyone for $1, and he raised a couple $1 million for potato salad, and ended up just throwing a giant feed everyone in the city where he was living kind of thing. It's like, yeah, you can't expect this guy to ship out 200,000 containers of potato salad, but hey, sometimes things don't go the way you want them to. So, all right. And again, show notes, Computer America, check it out. The last thing, or one of the last things that we have to talk about here, and I thought this might be interesting for you because obviously, actually, real quick, we can mention it, techguy.org, if we haven't already. I know we have. But this is going to kind of blend into this, into your service, Mike. And that's the idea of moderation because you have a very, very popular site. A lot of people go there for tech help and that nature. I saw, down there in your disclaimers, you don't help anyone with peer-to-peer. You don't help anyone with, any kind of illegal activity.
Right.
And, when you have thousands of people posting thousands of pieces of content, yeah, you can ask people to moderate on your behalf. But, first of all, tell everyone out there what techguy.org does, just so we don't say it's all doom and gloom. But then let's get into moderation, how you handle moderation at techguy.org.
Yeah, and it's a difficult thing to do. So TechGuy.org has been around for, boy, I don't know, 15 years now, and it was one of the first communities to go out there and allow people to help one another with computer problems. It's all free, paid for by the advertisers and also by donations. So you can go in there, post a question about whatever problem you're having with a computer, and a volunteer will try to help you with it or point you in the right direction. And hopefully while you're there, you'll also see another question that you can answer. And that's the way it kind of works, is that chances are you know more about a particular problem than someone else does, and likewise the other direction. But yeah, with any type of community, you need to set up guidelines and rules, and it's something that has certainly been a struggle through the years to figure out where to draw that line and how to enforce it. We decided early on we weren't going to have illegal activities on there. We were one of the early sites to not allow people to discuss how to, I refer to it as stealing music and stealing videos and that sort of thing, which is so commonplace these days. Everyone does it, right? But that's not something that wasn't one of our standards that we wanted people to discuss on our site. And it's interesting whenever you do this, and I see this so often in Facebook, where people get in trouble for something they posted on Facebook,
Right.
and we've had it on our site over and over and over again. People send me these nasty emails when they get, reprimanded for breaking one of the rules. They say, freedom of speech. I can post whatever I want to post. And I just, my head in my hand, and just like, oh, people just don't get it. They don't understand what that means. Freedom of speech means the government can't limit your speech, but on my site, I can limit your speech. And
Yeah.
on Facebook can limit your speech. Now you can go out and start your own site and post whatever you want, but if you create your own site and I want to post something on it, you can limit my speech. Like, that's the way it works. Every community, everyone who creates a site can come up with their own guidelines and enforce them if they want, and allow whoever they want on there or not on there, and you just have to follow their rules. So it's a difficult thing to come up with. Now with Facebook, it's especially difficult because they've got such a huge community worldwide. Everyone is on Facebook
They
practically.
they 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 don't just have a huge community. They have the hugest, the
Right.
biggest
The
community.
biggest, yes,
Yeah,
that's right. And people come from different backgrounds and have different opinions on what is right or wrong, or should be, censored or should not be censored, or what language or images or whatever else is okay or not okay to share. So it's not an easy thing to do. And then the other part of it is that it's such an instant thing that you post something right now and it's shared right now. It doesn't go through a process where someone has to look at it first, because how could you conceivably do that with something like Facebook? We can't do it with Tech Support Guy, and we have a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the amount of
right.
content that is being posted to Facebook. So you rely on the community, and we do that as well, where people go in, you see something that is inappropriate or is against the rules, you hit a report button, and it goes to a moderator. So we have a team of moderators on the site who are from all around the world, so that their chances are there's someone who's awake, in that time zone, who can keep an eye on things,
Right.
and they'll go in and review these and remove things that aren't appropriate, or remove people who are causing trouble. And Facebook does the same thing. They have thousands of moderators who review these submissions where people report problems, and choose whether or not that's actually against one of the guidelines. So the story is that Facebook just announced that they're going to hire another 3,000 moderators to monitor, especially the live stream issue, because that's been the thing in the news lately, where you've sad stories of murders and suicides and other violence taking place on live stream on Facebook. And so Facebook's going to try and step it up and be able to respond to that quicker and be able to pull
And
those videos off.
right, and my reason for bringing this up was because first of all, it's a very interesting problem. It's like you said, so much content and so much, such a big problem that I don't know if Facebook is going to be able to accurately do this, because with 3,000 new hires, that, for anyone who is counting, that makes the entire department 7,500 people who are going to be actively reviewing not everything but reports. If you report
Right.
something, 7,500 people. Any given time, I'm sure there's thousands of people looking at these reports, weeding out the bad stuff, and responding to it. But you could compare that to something like YouTube. And, YouTube, for those of you who do not know, they have a very robust content reporting system. All you do is press a little flag, it reports it, and more often than not, Google's automated algorithm will pretty much shut everything down. Like they review things at a bare minimum, and then they move on, because, just like Facebook, YouTube has millions of minutes of video uploaded every single day. So
Right.
I guess my question to you, Mike, was, do you think this is the right approach? Do you think more people is the answer, or do you think, kind of YouTube's approach, where YouTube has machine learning and they kind of just err on the side of caution?
Well, you need a little bit of a balance, and Facebook certainly has some AI that reviews some of it, and can respond to some of it as a result. The problem is that anytime you have a system like that, people can game the system. So if you have it based on, if a certain percentage of people report this as bad, automatically assume it's bad, you can easily have people work together to try to take things down that aren't actually bad. So you still need that human element in there. You need someone to oversee the robots.
Right. Absolutely. So, no, great. And, again, it was also nice to hear a little bit about techguy.org. So, yeah, we have about less than a minute here. Mike, what's going on with you? What's happening over there?
90
Yeah, well,
seconds.
techguy.org is going great. We have a lot of volunteers on there helping with all kinds of problems. So if you're getting a new Surface Pro, or if you're having trouble with your new cool device you got on IndieGoGo, then you can head over there and post a question, and chances are someone will be able to help you out.
Funny
We
story. And
Yeah.
funny story, I'm actually going to be posting over there later today. I'm going to have you, review it. But no, anyone over there at techguy.org can check it out. But I've been having a problem. I installed a
60
new
seconds.
motherboard. I'm getting hissing in my left headphone ear cup only, and
Weird.
it's driving me crazy. So I don't know if it's a bad connection because I've tried everything. I don't know. I'm gonna be posting over there, but yeah. So just real quick, and Mike, I'm gonna say thank you so much for coming, and looking forward to next month. Thank you for joining us here.
My pleasure.
All right, and everyone else who was listening, thank you so much for tuning in. That is just about it here for Computer America. Thank you so much for checking us out, and tune in tomorrow as we have on the show. Let me make sure I get this right. Tomorrow on the show, we have a company called Kimi. Kimi, that's right. And yeah, it's one of those smart lock companies out there that we were just talking about. So Kimi, we'll have them on the show tomorrow. And yeah, see you same time, same place. 4 p.m.
10
to 5 p.m.
seconds.
Eastern. Have a good one. Bye, everyone.